welcome all the souls here because what we're trying to do is have a meeting of the science and the souls and the soul of man. And there's a purpose, and that purpose is peace. And this includes everyone. This is not an exclusive club, or this is not a convention or cult. This is everyone, because we are all on this planet together. And so the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute is allowing me to make this presentation on plasma science. And last week we finished with the advanced knowing, which was really only an extension of our basic learning. And so we will continue some basic learning today, and we will call it basic insight. So this begins a new chapter, if you will. And today's topic is beauty pageants. My name is Alexander. I am from Canada. It is January the 30th, 2022. This is a presentation of the Keshe Foundation North America Plasma Education Series. We started a little over a year ago with my classes. I was trying to support the classes of the other teachers in the best way that I knew how. And so we found that not everybody wants to know everything. They just want to know things that are most important to themselves. But we had to go through some basic teaching, and then we expanded that to intermediate and advanced. And once we achieved that, we got into basic understanding. And as you can see, the pattern repeats. But once we had that, we had to cross over the bridge of knowing. And that was a really difficult bridge. Part of the problem also has to do with the teacher. You see, I'm also having to cross the bridge. And now it just doesn't stop. And that's the thing. There were a lot of thoughts crossing my mind today, because when you look through history, there are many, many important events. And one of the nice things to be able to do is to tell your grandchildren, where were you when that important event happened? And so we have to ask ourselves where we've been for the last couple of days. And so today's topic, however, has to keep moving on. So there's history and there's the future. And when these things come together, this is the present. And so we just have to keep talking. We have to keep teaching, because it opens up new avenues. Because whatever happens today will finish today, but what happens tomorrow will have to carry on. So we are builders of our future. We all like beauty pageants, and that's the discussion today, isn't it? But before I get carried away, I would like to just make sure that we're all on course, and we understand that we are preparing to launch to the moon, and the countdown is T minus 126 days, plus, plus, plus. And we are a space agency. So this is the main reason that Keshe Foundation North American Corona team is meeting, because we're trying to bring this space technology to the patriots on Earth. And we're trying to understand the books of Mr. Keshe. Book number 1, The Universal Order of Creation of Matters, The Structure of Light, book number 2. And then book number 3, The Origin of the Universe. But the subject matter really is the link between the source and our soul, and how it relates to the universe. And then when we look into the universe, we have to wonder, are we looking at it backwards, or, is it upside down? And so as we ask these questions, we travel into uncharted skies. And we have to travel into these uncharted skies because things are well charted here. And what we've come to realize is that Well, we have to really be discriminatory in which leaders we follow, because honestly, some leaders will just lead us over the cliff. And so to be able to discriminate this, then not only the leaders, but the teachers become students. And so there's more there than you can just hear, and there's more there than just you can see. And we have to sort this out because clearly, there are rough seas ahead. So somehow we have to, you see, the word revolution is not correct, because the revolution is a overturning of the government. We're not looking for a revolution. What we're looking at is to tune in to what's going on in the rest of the universe. Turn on our senses and our understanding to what is going on in the rest of the universe. And we're just going to have to drop out of our, we're going to have to drop out of our rigs to figure out this, because it's really hard to take all this baggage. See, because the creation of the universe, and now we know what it is, it's energy. It all exists from energy. And so there's a conversion of energy as depicted on the cover of book number 1. And then there's an exchange of energy between two convergences of energy. And then these energies converge and diverge as well. And, it's really important to look good. And that's one of the reasons we really enjoy these beauty contests. And because beauty is one of the key components of attraction. And so we could say that the lack of beauty is one of the key components of repulsion. But that is only on one dimension. The universe works through the magnetical field forces of attraction and repulsion. And although we are crossing the bridge of knowing, we need to review, because there's not enough of us crossing the bridge. You see, that's the problem. So as students, we're all faced with the challenge of being teachers as well. So we need to have this terminology, and we need to understand the sequence, and we need to understand how it manifests. And, these may be big words, but the thing is they have meaning, and that meaning is a two-way street. So in other words, that meaning is something that we convey, but that is also a meaning that is fed back to us. And this is part of the magnetical gravitational field forces. But in order to have these field forces, there has to be a base. And so that base is the combination of the attraction repulsion forces. So above that is where the magnetical and gravitational forces stream from. So what this is above is what we call a maggrav. And a maggrav can be manifest either through attraction or repulsion sequence, or repulsion attraction sequence. And so the net effect can be creation or decay, but it's creation in all ends, and it's natural. And so we say that the magnetical field forces deal with emission, and the gravitational field forces deal with absorption. So we have a basis to emit and a basis to absorb. So we need to have a basis to emit to, and we need to have a basis to absorb from. So when we look at ray creation, we see that the basic model of nuclear decay as described by Mr. Cash, scientifically speaking, is a neutron which breaks up into an electron-proton marriage. But there's a byproduct, and this is the release of PM ticks. And so we know that these PM ticks are actually rays. They are rays of energy, and they move. And so this is the essence of creation. Now, you can create or you can decay. And that's an unfortunate word, because in both instances, there's a creation. But somewhere, somehow, there's a bond between these. And we've had to fudge this. We don't know what it means. We don't know how it works. But we just have to kind of accept it and just scientifically say, we don't know, right? But what we do know is that there has to be a relationship between the magnetical and gravitational field forces. So we had to flip the picture around. Excuse me. Thank you. So when we flip the picture around, we can see the connections. These connections that we can't describe. And these connections are not exclusive. They are shared. And so in the top part of the picture, we have the neutron and is sharing energy with the electron and the proton. And we know that the electron and proton is also sharing energy. But if we just look at the system up top, we can see that if we're either creating something or we're decaying into something, we have to create another similar field. And so when we look at the bottom portion, well, it's the same thing. There is a neutron, there's a connection to the electron and the proton. Now, what is the bond between these two fields? So there has to be a connection. Oh, yeah, between the neutron and the electron-proton combination. And it goes both ways. That's what we said. It's a two-way street. So all of these things are connected, but there is a difference. There is a difference in field strength. And so there is a gap in between. And so it is this gap that we have to try and figure out. How do we see that? How do we detect that? How do we know? And so we do know gravitationally through attraction that these field forces converge. And we do know magnetically through repulsion, these field forces diverge. But there's an independent variable. And there's something that the world needs to know. As I said, it's a very important historic day. And, you know, in Canada, you have to stand tall like a moose. But when you protest, you have to honk like a goose. And that's the only way that you can peacefully protest, because we've received an existential crisis point. And the thing is that we are all interdependent, as is the universe. And we are all independent in our own tiny perfect world. So with respect to the truckers, what you have to understand is that they are all independents. You do not see truckers involved who are fleet drivers. These are all independents. And they make up a substantial portion of all the truckers. And as a substantial portion of it, and you know that it's a very, very, very expensive and dangerous business, there is something that drives these truckers, pardon the pun, to do this job, which is not only physically demanding, mentally demanding, and emotionally draining, where they stay apart from their families. And somehow, some way, they themselves have come to an emotional transformation, which really is a rationalization. It's an acquiescence of sorts to say, in order for me to maintain my independence, and in order for me to coexist through interdependence, I have to make sacrifices. And this is, we all want to do this. But when you come to the existential crisis, that you are no longer allowed to be an independent, and that you have to be interdependent, but not as a provider, as a contributor, as someone who is providing a valuable service to the society, but mandated. This causes an emotional problem. But you know what? It's been 2 years and we've all had an emotional problem. When I'm talking about the 2 years, I'm talking about when we introduced the cups of life, they were not the cups of pandemic. And so the cups of life have helped a lot of people, whether they had trouble with the pandemic or not, because the cups of life deal with life. And the cups of life are physical manifestations of the knowledge that has been imparted through the Spaceship Institute. And so thanks to Mr. Kesh, he's been able to deliver that in a way that is insightful. And we need to learn about this insightfulness, because we can hear the honking and we can see the big rigs, but can you see the connection? And can you see the impact? And so we are all in the same boat. Hello. It's taken you 2 years to figure it out, but great. We're really glad that you have figured it out, because why have the truckers figured it out now? Why haven't they're not the only job. Why haven't the others done that? And that is the word, independence. These people are independents, and these rigs are expensive, and they are expensive to operate. And it's dangerous. It's a dangerous job. It's a dangerous environment, and it's lonely on the road. But they maintain their independence. Other businesses do not have that kind of characteristic. So although they feel the same emotion, they're not able to express it themselves in such a manner, because this major financial commitment that they have made is an existential crisis, because they have made the long trek. But the problem is the road back is going to be even longer if they don't succeed. And for many of them, there's no point going back. They might as well just park their rigs, because they're going to get repossessed anyway. So there's a real serious importance to understand how the cups are made. And I can't emphasize this enough, even despite the fact that I repeat it every single time. But we have to understand that how do we take physical zinc plates and copper coils and create this magnetical gravitational field? And how do we differentiate between this emotional and this physical thing? And how do we treat the pandemic by keeping the batches at least 1 meter apart if we want a strictly emotional context or strictly a physical context? But you as a human being, you cannot be strictly an emotional or strictly a physical context. Even the winner of the beauty pageant, Miss Universe, when she wins, she's an emotional wreck, right? or, it's a contrived cry, maybe, but they always cry, right? Because there's a lot of emotion that is conveyed. And so we look in the cups of life and we say, well, where does all this gas come from? And so it comes from our physical construction of the cups of life. Yes. However, it comes from the air. And why does it come from the air? And that's the missing ingredient, you see, because all of these cups have a soul. So each of these cups have a magnetical gravitational field force and a soul. So it's the creation of the magnetical gravitational field force that attracts the soul. And that's what we've been learning in the Knowledge Seekers workshops. But several months ago, we've taken a different pattern. And so we now have a new opportunity where we have a magnetical gravitational field in the individual cups, a magnetical gravitational field in the collection of the cups, and we have a soul in each of the individual cups, and we have a collective soul in all of the cups together. And so if you've been following this sequence, you understand that the top cup is the cup of soul, and then the two middle cups, the cup of emotion and the cup of physicality. And of course, our environment, which includes the cup of the earth and the connection to our environment, which we call the cup of inertia. So automatically, there are variables here. And so one of those variables is the one up top. We all have a soul. There's over 7 billion of us as souls. So that is the variable. As a result of the presence of our soul, we have different bodies. And the embodiment of these bodies constitutes both the emotional and physical context. And so we all have that. And then we also have the variability in both of those. And then, of course, now we have the opportunity that not only can we interact with the cup of the earth, but we can interact with, well, maybe, the cup of Mars, or the cup of the moon, or the cup of the sun, or who knows. So the inertia is the connector. And so this inertia is something that we can carry forward. But how do we carry it forward? Because we can't carry the baggage, right? So now we understand what we have to learn. And so we have the stacker unit, which kind of represents our spine of courage. But we also have the universal cup, which kind of represents the brain of physicality. And so there's an interaction between the spine of physicality and the brain of physicality. And there's a connection there. And then we find that there is a dynamic transfer state, and the target is the physical destination state. And that's what we have to do. We have to figure out this target practice. So of course, this is one of the components that we found as part of cellular division, because we all have over 70 trillion cells in our body, and each of them is unique as well. So in each individual, if we want to just be very simplistic, the individuality on this planet in just a human state would be the 7 billion times the 70 trillion. That's a lot of individuality. And so this connection is this ray creation, the PM ticks. This is the fudge factor that we've never understood. The truckers understand this. It's called radar love. When you've been driving all night and your hands are wet on the wheel and you can't see the road. And the road, you're transmitting on the road and you're transitioning on the road. And that is the X and Y axis. But we've reached a crossover point. This is the crossover point where we've discussed how do we go from the physicality to the other dimensions. When we have in physicality, we have two dimensions, the transmission dimension and the transition dimension, right? But we're at the crossroads, and the crossroads is telling us that you can go to the horizon, or you can go left or to the right. But those are not your only choices. You have a field strength. How many cross these crossroads, right? How fast do they cross this crossroads? So how fast they cross is the strength of the flow. And which way they cross is the direction of the flow. And so we can vary the gradient. We can vary the charge to change the direction, or we can change the charge gradient to affect the strength of the flow. And all this is represented in the field strength. And now here's the thing with the field strength. That field strength will retain its plasma in the core. And at that point, it determines its position. And that's all it determines. But there's an interaction with other plasmas. And so it is the relative field strength. In other words, the susceptibility of the relationship reference that affects the direction and strength of flow. And if it's additive, then there's a synergy where 1 and 1 is more than 2. And so this is the essence of energy. It's energy in motion. And it can transcend many ranges. So we can have some ranges here on this planet Earth. We can have ranges in other planets, but we can also have ranges in other fields. So we have the physical fields, the emotional fields, and the plasma fields. So we keep talking about the state of ignorance because that's one of the toughest things to overcome. And one of the things we're trying to do is, as teachers, is to make the ignorant aware. And so that's what teaching is all about, is to teach the ignorant to be aware, because that's the definition of being ignorant. But there's another definition, and that is when you're aware and unwilling. That's ignorant, right? And it's hard enough to cross the bridge. But when the bridge is out and you can't cross the bridge, that's another thing. But when the bridge is there and you don't want to cross the bridge, well, that's not the state of ignorance. That's a state of corruption. And so, as I said, well, you know, when we're looking at the statistics, and you don't need to be a mathematician or a rocket science to figure out that cancer is still the leading cause of illness and mortality. 200 in Canada every day. So, but that's not a pandemic. And we're not too fussy about our pandemics anyway, unless it becomes an existential crisis for some of us, especially the independents. But for the rest of us, well, it becomes an existential crisis also. But once we, you know, grapple with that decision, then we like to grapple with our different competitions and try and, you know, have a normal life. And so we have these competitions, you know, we have sporting events, right? This is what brings the crowds. And another competition, of course, is in business, right? Businesses compete. But there are bodybuilding competitions, which is, you know, based on what? And then there's dating competitions, and of course the favorite, the gambling competitions, which involve poker, where lying and cheating is rewarded. And of course the ultimate competition, which is war, because that one really helps with the business. So, but in the meantime, you know, we have these beauty competitions. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, is this beauty competition. And as the people are gathering, everybody likes to come to see the Miss Universe pageant. And there's a difference that we have to understand as knowledge seekers. that there's, some people say, well, there's the sizzle and there's the steak. Well, the sizzle is what gets everybody excited, right? And the sizzle is very superficial. And that's what's going to have to do when you don't have the steak, because the steak is the substance. So if you don't have to have the substance, then you have to have the superficiality. And this is all how we do this emotional tugging, right? So then we have to substitute those things that we think are valuable for things that we well, they're kind of superficial. Let's put it that way. So we want to talk about the last 10 finalists, because we want to get down to the crowning of Miss Universe. And so I'd just like to introduce the last 10 finalists for you. This Miss Zarable. And I don't know how she got in the last 10 here, because she's miserable. And, to be miserable is really kind of a state of mind, isn't it? And this is then when you have few things to desire and many things to fear. And many of us live this way. And it's kind of popular, hard to believe. But then, of course, welcome, Misdirected. Misdirected, yeah, she's all duded up, right? And there's a science in how you do that, right? Because you could use beauty as a weapon. But the real elegance is in the modesty. And what would you like, Misdirected? Well, of course, my wish is for world peace, she says. Well, this is good. Thank you so much. Well, here's Misused. Misused, yeah, we all know that love is of all the passions, is the strongest. Because it has a 3-prong attack, right? Attacks the head, the heart, and the senses. It's an attack. And so Misused, what would you like? Well, I think she says my wish is for world peace. Okay, well, this is really good. Thank you. Then, of course, there's Mistaken. And, we already said that there are many people who are depressed, but these people are actually living in the past, you see. So the opposite of being depressed is if you're anxious. And most of us are anxious, I think, because we're living in the future. We're living in a hopeful world, as opposed to this make-believe world. Well, if you're at peace, you're living in the present. So the emotion of presence is a very peaceful proposition. And Mistaken, oh yes, you wish for world peace also. Oh, this is good. Thank you so much. Wow. And then, how can you, how can you forget Misplaced? Yeah, I guess your wish is for world peace too, right? But I think someone gave you some bad advice on how to come to the contest. Then, of course, there's Misguided. And I'm trying to figure out how come the universe is eternal. And the universe doesn't work things the way they work on Earth, because it doesn't live for itself. It gives life to others as it transforms. And so, in many ways, the truck convoy represented that, because they were the lifeblood of the economy. And for them, they didn't have the restrictions to cross the border. They were universal travelers. And you have to understand, of course, that what really drove the success of this particular industry was NAFTA. And as part of the North American Corona team, you all know that NAFTA allows trucks to go unhindered from Mexico to Canada via the United States. And so we're allowed to cross the borders without any problems. It's just the rest of us riffraff can't cross the border. So, but in the last 2 years, they've been able to do that. And now they can't. Well, they can, but they've been mandated. And so they've never wished for anything else. It's just been misguided. But their wish is for world peace. And then, of course, it's misbehaved, right? When you're loved, that gives someone gives you strength. But when you love someone, that gives you courage. As long as it's sincere. Isn't that right, misbehaved? What's your wish? Oh, yeah, I know. The wish is for world peace. Sorry to be so cynical. You know, because here comes misconstrued. Oh my God, I think you're living life dangerously there. I don't think that's the right way to go. So, but you know, when you're sincere, this comes from within. This is not something that you build like a sandcastle on the beach. It is something that you have and you've created because you're sincere. You can't fake this. And it is outwardly realized by others people's hearts. So you may be misconstrued, but we all wish for world peace, don't we? And of course, it's misunderstood. Yeah, don't be upset at being misunderstood. What you need to do is to be upset at not being understanding. And how can you be understanding when you're preoccupied with your misguided behavior? But I understand misunderstood. You wish for world peace, I get it. And then of course it's misappropriated. Oh, another dangerous journey. It could be very slippery up there. So, but anyway, a lot of us don't care about what other people think. But a lot more of us care about what other people think, right? And that's where what other people care about and what you think is important is what makes you their prisoner. You can't make people think about you the way you want them to, based on going into the change room and putting makeup on. That's why we have beauty contests. So, because we get to judge what we think about you. And it's a good thing you wish for world peace, because otherwise we'd be talking about other things. So one of the things also we'd like to talk about is scandals, lots of scandals, because that keeps us busy, right? So we like to gossip. And of course, through the gossip, we like to play the blame game, right? But all this is directing attention. And, you know, directing attention from what? Well, two of the candidates didn't make the final 10, and that was mismanagement. But mismanagement's nowhere like missabotage. Missabotage is not very subtle. And neither is Miss Wicked. She was totally disqualified. We have been disqualified by the Three Musketeers: the killing, the jealousy, and the kingship. Maybe with our insight, we'll be able to straighten this out, sort it out, because we need to figure out our target practice. We need to deflect. We need to deflect the blame. We need to guide ourselves so that we hit the target without accidents. Bullseye. And so, yeah, we all have goals, but in our entertainments, our goals are achieved through scoring. And if we can't keep track of the scoring, then we keep track of the judging. And so we've come to this validation point where through all these validations, where we have the verification and validation and our point of existence, and we have to understand that this confirmation is visible and that the balanced maggrav is invisible. These are the soul limitations. How do we go from the tangible to the non-tangible, visible to the non-visible, and back? And we know it's there because in our Gans, which is in the water, which is in the air, has a hole. And something made that hole. And seeing is believing, isn't it? There's nothing there. Can you see it? So that's the thing. There's a connection. There's a connection in the universe. And we have to know by connection. But we can't just connect by crossing the border from one country to another. We have to connect right around the world. Well, if we can connect right around the world, then we might as well connect with other universes. What's the limitation there? So when you see this convoy, one follows the other. That's a long convoy. Some said it was 93 miles long. That's a lot of trucks. We still don't know how many. But there's a connection. There's no chain. There's no hook. There's no fifth wheel connecting. But something is connecting. And they've discovered it. And so this energy is traveling all around the world. And so you as knowledge seekers and plasma scientists have to understand that these energies go in, out, and around, and then sometimes they just pass on through. And we have enough examples all over the place, enough examples of what's wrong. We need examples of what's right. So what's right is understanding the magnetical gravitational field forces, which manifest the emission and absorption of energy through the forces of repulsion and attraction. And so we have to understand how we're operating on this earth. As we stand on the crust and we look up to the sky, which is the terminus, is the edge of the magnetosphere. And we have to understand that our movement is from the core of the earth to the core of our soul, and how we move is based on susceptibility. So I'd just like to review one of the previous classes I had with respect to universal functionaries. And if we take our two hands and we just see that they're opposing, aren't they? But just to kind of keep track, if we just align the hands a little bit, so let's align one hand where the index finger is aligned with the pinky, so that would be the connection, right? And so if we were to represent these connections and say, well, let's look at the top hand and say that's our soul, and the remaining three fingers represent our soul, our spiritual body, and our astral body. And then let's look at our physical body. And that physical body has a mental, emotional, and a physical component. And so somehow, some way, there's a connection. We call that an intuitive connection. So what you see is that within the body, there are 3 dimensions. Within the soul, there are 3 dimensions. And so there are 7 dimensions here. So that's kind of odd. So the intuitive one is the connection. But on its own, it cannot function because it's only the single dimension. So we talked about the 3 dimensions, X, Y, and Z. So there has to be a connection between the astral and the mental. And we see this because when we go to sleep, we get to dream. And we can connect because we drop the physical. So if we want to connect to a higher dimension, we have to drop 1 because we can only engage 3. And why are we engaging 3? Because we are none of those 3. You can't be in it and be an observer of it. If you're in it, you're a participant. If you're an observer, you're on the outside looking in. So what you're looking at with respect to your body is the 3 dimensions of the mental, emotional, and physical context. And what your soul is doing is the same thing. It has its soul, spiritual, and astral plane. So the connection has its astral, intuitive, and mental connection, right? And so now we see that there's a limitation. And if we just change that alignment around and become a little bit more familiar with the things that, we kind of understand in our physicality. So if we take us as our physical man, okay, so now we have our soul, which is connected to our emotional, and mental, and physical, right? That's our soul. But there's a physical connection to the earth. And the earth has its own context. So it has a core, it has a mantle, it has a crust. And the upper part of the crust is the magnetosphere. And it is through the magnetosphere interaction with our soul that we were able to achieve this physicality. And this becomes a really, really important point, because just to review, the construction of the man was the construction of the soul, the mental component, the emotional component, which was represented in the physical. And the physical is connected to the Earth's magnetosphere. However, the magnetosphere of the Earth is connected to the crust, and the physicality of man is connected to the emotion. So there's a connection between the emotion, the physicality, and the Earth. So this is how you have the 3 dimensions of your construction, the 3 dimensions of the Earth's construction, and the 3 dimensions of the interaction. And in order to interact with one, you have to drop the other. So this is just a very basic insight into what's going on. And as we discussed last week with the soul limitations, we see clearly that if we maintain our independence as an independent variable, we have to have a trust, and that's our emotion of presence. It is a trust of the soul of the man's interaction with the soul of the body. But now if you count and you say, well, the soul of the body includes the emotion of the body and the physical body, well, that's your 3. But then when you look at the soul of the man hooks up with the mind, emotion, and the brain body. And that's the 3. But you see the problem here is that the brain body is also a body. And this is where the disconnect comes in, you see. because if you have the physical body, the emotional body, the brain body, and the soul of the body, that's 4. So the math doesn't add up. So what does that mean? That means there are other possibilities. This thinking is limiting to our soul, but there's a new thinking. There's a new game in town. And this is the connections. What we want to get to is to get back to nature. From what we know in terms of our physicality, the magnetical gravitational field forces attract the soul of the man. And the interaction of the soul of the man with the soul of the earth creates the soul of the body. Okay, so now the magnetical gravitational field forces of the physicality creates a field force which attracts the soul of the body, and that's the connection. However, it is possible for the magnetical gravitational field forces of the interaction between the soul of the man and the soul of the earth to attract the soul of the body. At that point, it is possible for the soul of the body to create the physicality and manifest the magnetical gravitational field forces of the physicality. What? So we now have 2 paths to get back to nature. So this is just the first class in this basic insight. So fundamentally, if we understand the rules of the game, that we are gravitational. So our relationship to the earth is magnetical. As far as the earth is concerned, the earth is gravitational and the relationship to us is magnetical. So this is how we go through the various states. And so we can see that there is a conversion. And these are all the skills that we have to learn. And as this is still part of the basic teaching, we still have to figure out how do we have this variety, which we call the spice of life, which is ubiquitous in the universe. It's transported through the energy packs. What is transported? The amino chain. From the amino chain comes the amino acid. Where would the amino acid come from otherwise? If it didn't come from the amino chain, then it wouldn't be amino acid, would it? So now we understand better how the indomitable spirit of man is carried through the soul packs. So then it becomes more sense when we talk about the sequencing. So the basic sequencing that we understand is the soul of the sun plus the soul of the earth. Oh, that's what brought the soul of man. So once the soul of man determines the context with the soul of the earth, oh, well, that brings the soul of the body. And then it's the soul of the earth plus the soul of the body, which manifests the physicality of the body. Well, that's the way the universe works. That's not the way we've been working on this planet. We're still bogged down in getting our relationships. So understanding the fundamental relationships between the magnetic and gravitational field forces, which we call a maggrav. When you have a maggrav, that is a balance of these 2 field forces. And if it's stationary, then it's invisible, but it's constantly in motion. So scientifically speaking, we're having a balance between the conservation of magnetic fields and the conservation of energy. And that's the way science has been talking about it, not taking into context what the spiritual community is talking about, and that is the spirit being the motor of the soul. So In either case, or in neither case, are they talking about the soul. They're talking about the physicality. So the plasma science needs to be added to this knowledge. So to understand, where does the physicality come from? So the substructure of the physicality is the matter-gen state, which is the plasmatic reality. It is the small m matter state, which is physical, and it has to come from somewhere. And so where does it come from? Well, it has to come from a matter-gen state, right? Whatever it is from where it comes from. And whether it's physical or whether it's plasmatic is determined by the dominant matter state. And the dominant matter state for us is the common denominator. Many of us are going to have different common denominators because the school of learning has changed. The definition of manifestation has changed. When two fields come together, they form another. The formation of any field is a manifestation. So that means it's either, if it's non-tangible or tangible, or visible or non-visible. Therefore, plasmatic manifestation or physical manifestation, both are the reality. But the plasmatic reality creates the physical reality. So the physical reality is a form artifact of this manifestation. What we really want to get into, what is the plasmatic manifestation? There. And so how does the emotion of presence interact? Well, the emotion of presence is this form artifact, and it's a form artifact of energy in motion. And this is what has mobilized people around the world in the only way they know how to do this peacefully, because they only want one thing, really, is to get back to normal. But we have to determine what is it that's normal. So we realize that the majority is what's normal, isn't it? And what we seek is freedom and emancipation. And this is normal because the universe is normal. And because the universe is normal, the earth is also seeking freedom and emancipation. And so a lot of this has to do with our spiritual enhancement and our soul enhancement. And this is the basis of the vision enhancement units, which we are delivering with the peace process as a gift to the US military, because they have not had the vision to connect to their souls. The souls would never be engaged in killing. Just wouldn't do that. So plasma, when people ask you, tell them however you want to tell them and try and get it done in 30 seconds. Just tell them plasmagen is a kind of energy state, and it transcends the limitations of science between the dream state and the physical state. And it's important. And I think everybody realizes that it's important, because everybody is facing an existential crisis, not just one group. And so what is different is that in the plasma rules, the higher strength feeds the weaker strength, not prey on the weaker strength, not abuse the weaker strength, because the weaker strength is the PM ticks, which are traveling through the universe, delivering the energy through the principal matter, the transition matter, and the convergence matter, converting into a plasma environment, which from there will interact via inertia, which would with whatever state that you want. And so this is a changing our point of view. And in many cases, well, if you're keeping track of the events, you better face the camera the right way. So you understand that it's not that man-made problem. It's understanding the role of man within this context. And the role of man is what we need to figure out, because the role of man right now is very, very self-serving. And this self-serving is done at the expense of others. There's nothing wrong with being self-serving. It's that when you do it in an energy binding manner, then you're actually shortchanging yourself through the stealing. And this is really the basis of the use and abuse. So the big deal is that the morality is the missing ingredient, right? We're very skillful at social abuse, but we're not skillful at awareness. So when we double cross people, we don't see the immediate consequences and this eternal burden that we face because we don't understand the ethics of the universe. And why is it so important? Because the universe is the embodiment of life, and life wants to live. So that's how you get the energy. That is the creation of energy, and that's the creation of creation. So if you have the wrong motives, your energy creation will stop, and in fact will diminish. So knowing by connection is an art, and we call it the art of dreaming. And the way we exchange energy is through the dilution. The dilution doesn't mean disintegration. That's why we can go through this emotional transformation, which we're trying to create with the peace stone. Because this is an energy coming from beyond the dream state, coming into our earth state, transmitting around the world, awakening the world. And we're all trying to cross the bridge of knowing. We've come to the point where we need more bridges, and they are crossing. And the easy part about this, you really don't have to know. You just have to know the system is broken. So that much you know. What you have is not working. And the limitations is our understanding of going through Earth space to outer space, that there's an intermediate state, it's the plasmagen state. And everything's okay as long as we have our comforts. But our comforts emanate from the moral comforts of the universe. And so there's a lot of wishing, there's a lot of courage, and there's a lot of love. But there's a lot of mental weeds that we have to be dealing with. Mental weeds that we toss, and mental weeds that we have to absorb because of our ideas when they don't merge with others. So we have to improve our skills. So we've come to that part that we've all wanted, and to figure out of the top 10 finalists, who is the new Miss Universe? Oh, are you all excited? So I just have to mention, though, that Miss Demeanor somehow crashed the gate here. It's always a gate crasher, right? And then just in case any one of these finalists is having a problem, well, misinterpret it is an alternative here. Okay, so let's open up the thing. And so we have to understand that when we judge the beauty queen, right, we are not judging the beauty queen. Our judgment is filtered through other judges, which they have picked, right? But nevertheless, whoever they pick as the beauty queen, we will idolize her and, of course, be forever jealous, right? But see, the problem with the beauty contest is that Only one is the beauty queen and the rest are not. So does that mean they're the ugly queens? Morality is still the missing ingredient in here, you see. Our judgment of the beauty queen, they say, well, it's only skin deep, right? So we can make mistakes by that, right? We don't get a lot of time to get to discern. So our skill level has to improve. And that's why you have these contentions and these different judgments, because beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. And you are the beholder. But if you can see past the skin deep and you can see the true beauty, well, just a moment, I have a news flash. Oh no. Oh, it seems like all the beauty queens have gone into hiding. I wonder if it has anything to do with this universe coming. Wow, sorry guys. We don't have a beauty queen winner today. There's something else going on, as you all know. And one of the reasons that you come to these classes is because of the experience. And so, well, what experience is that? You're just listening to it over the computer, aren't you? Over the internet. Well, the thing is, it's real, it's current. And one of the reasons to stand by the side of the road and honk your horn like an idiot is because we all have dreams and wishes. And these are big rigs. They are really, really big rigs and they're very expensive. And, you know, they represent the kind of outward courage that dares to die. But the real courage is from within, which dares to live. And see, the thing about these guys is if you listen to them, to a man, they all say the same thing. My wish is for freedom, love, and world peace. We have big rigs and we have big dreams. And we wish for world peace as well. And in order to understand why world peace is important, is to understand that there is an inner space and an outer space, and that there's a difference. So our inner space is still determined by the physicality of the particle wave relationship, whereas the outer space is determined by these fields, these photons that are traveling, energy in motion. And as the energy in motion is always coming together and coming into contact, and it creates a field. And whatever it creates, well, that is the greater oneness. That is the greater oneness that we're all looking at, because it's the greater oneness that allows us to join up with the rest of the universal community. And this is where the Universal Council is doing its utmost to make this happen. This is the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute, Teachings in Plasma Science. We're calling all patriots, near and far. We have a World Peace Treaty. Sign it. This will bring about the physical and emotional transformation which we need to join the universal community. And as truth seekers, you will all become legends. As we gain insight into the universal knowledge of freedom. plasma science needs to be delivered in exchange for peace on Earth. This is the new space age. Welcome to the new space age. Thank you. It's the end of the lesson.
That was a short lesson, Alex. Can you continue? Thank you very much for, again, a beautiful way to think about things in a different light, a different understanding, but all within the same understanding in a way. I did pull up that song, Radar Love, just the lyrics of it. And yes, there is a sort of telepathy going on there, but we could talk about that later. Maybe we'll give Alex a minute or few minutes to warm his tea and his toes and check the pressure on the tires on the big rig. Just wondering if anyone has come to the meeting for the first time. Would you tell us your name while we're writing our questions down for Alex? Would you tell us maybe your first name and where you're from if you're here for the first time and how you found us? Well, maybe people have been around the foundation in other meetings. There's many, many, many knowledge seekers. Salamia, you've been here before?
Yeah. I don't know what. Yes, I would like to talk.
Oh,
hello,
sure.
everybody. Thank you very much. I had a question for Mr. Alex. Do you agree that maybe you miss something to have a integral image of your talk, including this gen, maybe field gen, magnetic field gen to put there, because we don't know from where is this field, magnetic field. Maybe this magnetic field is a beauty, is God. This magnetic field gen. It's just a suggestion. I don't know if you agree or not. What do you think?
I think the plasma gen kind of covers it very well because the word plasma is generic. It refers to the plasma, which we talk about as the non-visible advanced science, but plasma includes the physicality. So because we know that, because when we take the universal enhancement units, we also can make them into universal material enhancement units. So this creation goes both ways. So the plasma is actually all encompassing. It's just when you're talking about something that's specific, what we have to understand is that when we say a description, let's say like beauty, there has to be a context. So, you know, it could be very easily, you know, if you have, let's say, 6 arms, you know, you'd be the most beautiful on another place, but here you'd kind of be a freak. And that's not to be insulting, it's just that, you know, we all have only 2 arms. So, but, you know, we reserve our criticisms to the humans. So, you know, we don't really go around and saying, oh, well, you know, to the caterpillar, oh, you have so many legs. And, you know, if one caterpillar looks at another caterpillar, do you think they would say the same thing? Oh, you have so many legs. You know, they would say, well, you know, you're beautiful. Well, it's in the eyes of the beholder, isn't it? So we're looking at generalities, and this is what I'm trying to say, is that where our skill level has to come in is, first of all, we don't have enough knowledge scientifically, right? we're just, ordinary people. So we have basic needs, but these needs are in a very small scheme. It's called Earth. And now we have new possibilities. And it's a bigger scheme, a much bigger scheme. It's called the universe. And this has been excluded from us. So the first thing is we have to have the awareness, and then we have to hone our skill. So one of the beauties of this planet is that it shows us how things work. And it does this two ways. First of all, it shows the biodiversity on this planet. So let's face it, when you look at the physicality of an ant, and then you look at the physicality of an elephant, and man, you have to say Mother Nature is a wonder. But the thing is that they are all souls. So we know the commonality of it. But because there's 7 billion of us and all the souls are different, then we can't say that it just comes from the plasmagen. So we have to say the kind of plasmagen that it is. So, but that's not all. Because what we're faced with is an inability for each of us individually to know what kind of plasmagen it is, because we are not true to our own souls. So, we have 2 problems. One is, how all of us as souls on this planet have to interact with the rest of the universe, and we're having trouble dealing with our own emotions. And when you see that, what are the basic requirements of the soul? And so you see freedom, love, and peace. And who is saying this? Truckers, who, every 5th word is a swear word, right? Whose jokes are disgusting. But, this is who they are. They are the salt of the earth, and they don't make any pretensions, right? They just want to be independent. And this is the basic motivation. And so that basic motivation is an interaction between the soul and the emotion. And now we're finding out, well, wait a second. There are more things to consider. And so what I just tried to do today is throw a little insight into the fact that we are emotionally exhausted, and which is, we now know, was the goal all along. But when we come to this existential crisis and realize, you know what, we are told that we can no longer, have a right to our way of living. We have mandates. We're told what to do in a way that only makes sense for a few and not for the majority. And what is the majority? Well, there is one other interesting thing that you should know, and that is the participants in here are from all walks of life. This has motivated everybody. And it's not that they needed to motivate, is that they needed an ignition point. Because what has happened in our country, and I have complained about this, moaned about this. First of all, the lack of participation of the Canadian fraternity into the plasma science. And 2, the division within our population, within our society, between those who have, shall we say, acquiesced to the mandates and those who are still opposed. The hesitancy that we have is that this is not a revolution. This is not something where we have to, you know, break into Capitol Hill and disrupt a certification of an election or something like that. That's not, you know, to bring guns and smash windows and stuff like that. That's not what this is. We just want our country back. But now we've come to the point, we're not the only ones. This is spreading worldwide. Why? Because freedom is an inalienable right for all of us. And that includes the universal ability for us to look after our health and well-being. That is a universal right. Nobody mandates that. Nobody mandates that. Look at the kittens. Have you ever seen a litter of kittens where, for one reason or another, the mother disappeared? Who nurtures the kittens? Who teaches the kittens? Do they go to kitten school or cat school? How do they manage? And you could say, well, they manage from scratch, right? They scratch you. But the fact of the matter is, their learning comes from somewhere. There is an inherent knowledge. And so now we have an opportunity to better understand that knowledge. And because we're aware, we have a better opportunity now to understand that we have other skills that we are not using. Oh, so if we were to activate those particular skills, well, you know, then we would have a better understanding of our knowledge. And then if in turn, and that will grow. And so when we understand that particular manifestation, then we understand how a field strength can grow. And it takes time. But how much time? So a baby, when it's born, within a matter of seconds, can go from inside the womb to outside of the womb and survive. That's pretty fast. But, you know, we've been doing this now as knowledge seekers over 8 years, and Mr. Kesh has been doing it for over 40 years. And, you know, we're still having resistance. Why are we having resistance? There has to be some kind of motivation. And the resistance comes from a lack of awareness. And so there's never been a revolution. This has been a coordinated assault on our sensibilities. The Peace Dome is a coordinated restoration of our sensibilities. And everything that's been happening in the process is just showing us how things work. And push comes to shove. When you see the hole in the gaps, there is a field force at work. And when you see 93 miles of trucks coming down the road, and there's a field force between them. So it doesn't matter if they have the jab or not. It doesn't matter if they're nurses or they're truck drivers. It doesn't matter, okay? Because freedom is a universal understanding. And this is what has manifest. It just required a trigger. And what has happened is that those who have been able to maintain their independence through foresight have now come to an existential crisis, which the rest of us, through lack of foresight, have been forced into. And so through our own actions, we become victimized. But now we have an opportunity, regardless of our economic status, to recover instantly, immediately. And so what? So what do we do back then? Do we go back to our sports games? Do we go back to our bingo? Do we go back to our beauty pageants? Or do we say, hey, we now have more. We have more to enjoy, more to explore, and more importantly, more to contribute. Because what is driving these truckers is that their inherent understanding is that they are contributors. The grocery shelves don't get filled if they don't deliver the goods. Every consumer item that you have consumed has been delivered by a trucker or some kind of transportation medium. It's in North America, because of the size, we are in a unique position here. Small population, large country. That is unique. No other country has this. If there is a large country, they have a large population. We have a tiny population, but we have huge, huge distances. And to be a trucker, you have to go through regulations, and you have to have a clean abstract. So you are not a killer. You're not a criminal. If you are, you're not allowed to drive. So this is a special group that they have navigated through their lives to a point where they have had to go to maintain their independence. They have had to go into this extremely dangerous job, and they feel honored because they are providing a valuable service, and they know that it's valuable because they have been told. They have had a privileged position over the last 2 years, and all of us are asking ourselves, why? Because it didn't make sense, and it still doesn't make sense. So someone decided to say, oh, well, it doesn't make sense that they're exempt. So, we're going to impose the same kind of mandates to them as to the rest of the population. And we know that's not true. We all know that. However, that's the mantra. And now you've come to the point where a significant portion of the population is basically told to walk away. And I'll tell you what, the last time I was this proud of Canadians was back when Canadians were a peacekeeping country. And it was 1967. We had our centennial celebration. And Canadians were really, really proud. And we've had a few other moments. You wouldn't understand that. 1972, we had a contrived hockey series, and we were proud at that point in time. But it's been few and far between, and it's been getting less and less and less. And all of us know that Canada is a peacekeeping nation, and Canadians are patriotic. So are Americans. So are Mexicans. Every country has their patriots. This is not a unique thing. All of us have that same thing. And what we've had is a galvanizing of emotion. And so, yeah, we need big rigs because we have big moose and we have big costs. And if you listen to it and if you follow it, and frankly, most of the people who are not from North America get more information than we do here. And all you hear is the honking. And if you think that's contrived, non-stop honking. Okay? You just, at some point in time, we have to come to our senses. What is that energy that is bringing us to our senses? Where does that come from? Yeah, that comes from the plasmagen. But where does that come from? That comes from the ethos of the universe. You know what's right. You don't need mommy to tell you what's right. You don't need a boss to tell you what's right, and you don't need a government to tell you what's right. You know what's right. If you have moral decency, you know what's right. Thanks to all the truckers.
Thank you for your answer. We are the true freedom seekers because we are patriot. We love all the years, and the earth is just a country, and we do not need to fight for anything, just to cooperate as a totality. We can say we are the patriot of the universe. And for me, beauty is God, the creator, I mean. The beauty is Mitra also. Together, they are the beauty. And I'm sorry because I came late. Now I realize your answer to me. I came late because I was in my travel, in astral travel. My wish was to come, but I came late. I was busy there. Sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay, thanks.
You're right on time, Solomia. Alex, how are the truckers? You know, there's a new way of moving freight and goods that's about to emerge on this planet. I don't know if it'll get to local deliveries, but eventually it probably will get to local deliveries. Are they going to say, here we go again? Or it will be to their benefit this time? It won't be taking away their livelihood. It's actually going to give them more free time, I would think.
So, Mark, it's an interesting point because, firstly, they are independent seekers. They're not truckers. The reason they became truckers is one of the few jobs where you can run as an independent. You are basically, you look at the rigs and why they're so expensive is because they spend so much time. So for them to come from the West Coast to Ottawa, they've been on the road all week, every day. So they've been away from home. So their truck is their home. So they want the nicest vehicle, the nicest creature comforts. But all it is really a glorified jail cell on wheels. And they're willing to take that for the right to be free. They're willing to take their mobile jail cell for the right to be free. Okay. And they are, you see, there was a really funny mantra, and it's only funny to us Canadians because one of the government sayings was to stand together, stand apart, which is like, when you really analyze it, it's you know, it's lacking something. So I'll just leave it at that. But with the truckers, because they're independent minded and because of the vastness of the country, you can get away from it all, provided that you can maintain your income, right? So you need to be financially self-sufficient to live in isolation, because that's one of the reasons that cities would come together. Why did the farming communities diminish and the urban centers increase? Was because when the farmers lost their livelihood for whatever reason, then they would flock to the city because the opportunity there was greater. So if you want to get away from the city or the so-called rat race, then you have to have the financial wherewithal to do that. So how can you be in isolation and still maintain that connection to society? Truck driving is perfect for that. But even that has been, you know, under the gun so much. But because of NAFTA, and it does go back that far, where, you know, we have boats, we have planes, and we have trains. But because of NAFTA, we had an absolute blossoming of number of trucks. And then they went from 48 feet long to 53 feet long, right? So that they could carry more. And so with the added weight, it put a tremendous load on the infrastructure. And you know that the situation in the United States is actually in dire straits with respect to the infrastructure. You know, we just heard of a bridge collapsing. Well, when I left the construction industry, there were only 26,000 bridges in the United States that were in that condition. Only 26,000, of which truck drivers drive over those bridges every day. And truck drivers will tell you, they always have trepidation when they're crossing these bridges because they can hear the creaking, you know, and sometimes they plan their routes so they don't have to go over those bridges. But this is what happens when a country invests in the military as opposed to investing in the infrastructure. And so, you know, this is a product. And why did this happen? Because we wanted open borders. Well, open for some and closed for others, right? So open for transportation, open for truckers, but closed for other reasons. And why would they be open for transportation? So once you start to ask those questions, and I don't want to go into it in this session here, but once you go into that, you find that when you go to business school, they teach you how to fail. If you want to know how to be successful in business, you got to know how to sell out the back door. That's just the way the business is done. And it's acceptable, but it's really not acceptable because all it does is it prolongs the problem. And so to maintain their independence, they bought into this system. So wasn't this a wonderful thing? We can have our own rig, and at least, you know, we can have our independence. And why should we be locked down like everybody else when we don't see anybody really? You know, we see the shipper, we see the receiver, that's it. Okay, and the rest of the time we are really in self-isolation. So now, you know, it's come to roost and say, well, just like there are rules for some and rules for others, there are rules for regular people and there's rules for truckers. And so they have a special privilege when they could cross the border. So two things now. Number one, they've lost that special privilege. Welcome to the rest of the riffraff, which is what independent-minded people want to get away from. So there's no problem for them standing apart. But they also, if we go to the one nation, one planet, we don't have to worry about the borders. And one of the reasons is so many, I think it's 20,000 truckers crossed the border from the United States, is because they too are in the same boat. And there's more of them than there is of us. So crossing the border is a two-way street, right? So now you have a dilemma. If the Canadian truckers can't cross the border, if they don't kowtow to the mandate, well, neither can the American ones. Wouldn't that be fair? So now you have a financial obligation through NAFTA, where the countries have to have a foreign exchange and foreign trade, international trade, and this is now being curtailed artificially. So you've got a crisis, and it's just come to the point. Well, I'm either going to be parked and lose my truck, or I'm going to drive to Ottawa and I'm also going to get my freedom back, or I'm going to park my truck and lose my truck anyway. So this is not a unique problem. This is just an awareness to them that we've all been suffering with this problem. We've all had an existential crisis where we've been told what we've gone through university for so many years, or so many years of training and learning to learn a particular vocation, only to find out that if we don't comply with the mandate, we won't be allowed to continue and would have to give it up. But you know, this is an ongoing thing. So what you're finding is that just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and we keep wanting our own independence. And one of the things, as I say, I was bemoaning the fact that the Canadians weren't aware. Why? Because this is a big country and we like to be independent. We don't mind being in isolated places. We don't have the congestion. I can't even imagine congestion that would be in some urban centers around the world. And it's bad enough in Toronto the way it is. When I was young, 30 to 45-minute commute was normal because Toronto was a big city. But now it's an hour and 45 minutes to 2 hours one way. Well, that's, you know, that really shortens your day. So the nice part about living in the boonies is that it only takes you a few minutes to get to work. And so you become more productive that way. However, you have to be able to make a living. And it's really, really hard. I have to tell you, it's really hard. And it's hard at the best of times. But we're not unique. It's just that we had a different scenario here. Big wide open spaces, big rigs, big freedom. And that's been taken away. So all that is just, it's 2 years too late. That's the sad part. So when we look at the hundreds of thousands of Iranians and then knowledge seekers on the Telegram sites and 300,000 Brazilians following Rafael and the crew, and you look at the handful of Canadians or Americans, and you have to understand why. It goes down to the basic psyche. Self-serving at the expense of others. It's right down to that. So we now have an awareness problem. And the worst is yet to come. Because as I say, it was a long drive from the West Coast. And many, many, many made it from the South, and many came in from the East Coast. And many border crossings. And there are border crossings between the provinces where the police have been trying to slow down or stop the transports. And so we have limitations on border crossings between provinces as well, which is unheard of, really. until now. But it's a long drive, is what I'm saying. It's a long drive to get there. And these people are going to be faced with an even longer drive going back. I don't know how that's going to play out.
I don't know either, but I know in man's future vision there in the 321, I think it is, Knowledge Seekers Workshop, people are going to be taking the engines out of their cars. And that was one of the first projects Mr. Ketch said he wanted to be involved with in Iran. I wonder if the truckers will be taking the wheels and the motors out of their trucks as well, trying to replicate or copy some of this plasma technology.
Well, that's a good point. See, you can't just stop them from doing what they're doing. You also have to offer a solution for them, because that's the first question they're going to ask. If you're preventing me from doing, everything that I've invested, not only the time, but the blood, sweat, and tears and the money, what's my alternative? And so this is where us as knowledge seekers are coming to a real dilemma, because how fast can we do this? How fast can we get what we all want? And that's we all want our freedom, and not just for ourselves, but for this planet, and not just for this planet, but also for the universal community. Oh, so the picture keeps getting bigger. Yeah. So, for people who are not aware, this would be like, bringing an Aborigine to, the big city. Talk about a culture shock. We've all gone through it. I can tell you personally that I've gone through it. I stood 5 feet away from the door, ready to run out. I'm glad I didn't run out. My life is better for it. And so this is how peace works.
Would someone else like to pose a question to Alex? I always thought, Alex, when we were talking about having a magrev condition, it was a balanced condition. But isn't everything a magrev? The sun is a magrev. It contains gravitational magnetic fields, the earth, we are. And how could you go into a totally balanced condition? Because wouldn't the gravitational always has to be stronger than the magnetical?
Right.
So you can bring up a weaker entity and not lose all your gravitational, but I'm just trying to understand this maglev position.
3 dimensions, Mark. Sorry, there are 3 dimensions. So which dimension are you looking at? That magrev, if it was neutral in all 3 dimensions, could not exist. Because at that point in time, you'd be stopping the energy and basically extricating it from the universe, which is what one of the limitations of the scientists. Oh, I want to be an observer. Okay, so just, pull down the zipper and step out of the universe, okay, and have a seat and turn around and, we'll show you how things work over here. It doesn't happen. The observer is part of the observation. And why is that? Well, that is what we're failing to understand. What is the link with all these truck drivers? If you were to ask them the question, why are you all on the road? And then you ask them the same question, why are all these people on the side of the road in minus 20, 25 degrees Celsius, waving them on? They are all physical, right? They're all human. They're all on the highway. They're all in the country. There's something in the air, something magical. And conventional science was, oh, I don't know what that is. You know, it's a movement. Yeah, it is a movement. What is the instigator of that movement? That's plasma energy. Energy is always in motion, so you can't stop it. So you can direct it. You can direct it, but you have three choices. So you can do it on door number 1, door number 2, or door number 3, or any combination thereof. But one door minimum has to be open. All 3 maximum may be open. And that's your plasma. Now, then you have another plasma, same rules. Now you have 2 plasma. Oh, what happens then? Well, they interact, same rules. Now you have 3. Oh, wait a second. 1 and 1 is 3? Not only. It's more than 2. But we didn't say how much more. And now we're beginning to understand that there's more to this equation. You don't just get up in your truck and drive. You get to the end of the line, you drop the load, collect your money. There's more.
Okay. Now, last year I was asking you, I said, you know, I see the electron and the proton being emitted from the neutron in fields, and then some of it gathers as a proton and some of it gathers as an electron. But I said, I still don't understand, where is the neutron in all this? And I thought your answer was the neutron doesn't really exist, but I could be wrong, because isn't the whole conglomeration there considered a neutron? It makes another neutron. Could you share that again with us or me?
No, but this is a brilliant question, okay? Because now we have 2 possibilities. So the first possibility is that we can have a MAGRAV condition. That's a magnetical gravitational interaction, right? And then we bring the soul. So the soul is the highest energy. The physicality is the lowest energy. So in that relationship, what you were talking about, the soul would be the neutron. The spirit would be the proton. And the physicality would be the electron. Now, we have another alternative. And that is that the neutron soul could be first. And then from there, we can have an electron-proton combination, being the soul of the body and the physical body. Either way, you have a manifestation. The question is the MAGRAV first or is the soul first? This has never been discussed before in an open forum. This is new science. And so if we understand the rules of that energy is constantly moving, then you ask yourselves, well, why is the energy only limited to moving in that direction? So if you have something that's limited in moving it in the x-axis, then maybe it'll move in the y-axis. But if you put something to limit it moving in the y-axis, well, what's left? Well, maybe I could put a limitation on the z-axis. No, you cannot. No, you cannot. Okay, because at that point in time, everything stops. Okay, so now you know the rules. So all you're doing with those 3 dimensions, the neutron, proton, and electron, is you're playing with them. But you don't know how strong they are, and you don't know which one came first. And if one came first, then which one came second? And why did the one who comes second not come first? And why did the one that came first not come second? So there's a criteria there, isn't there? And, you know, conventional sciences, I don't know. Well, now we do know. It all has to do with field strength, nearness and proximity, path link and susceptibility. All right. So how do you get 50,000 truckers to hit the road? You go and tell a trucker to hit the road and you better run. But we got 50,000 on the move and they're not being paid. There's over $6 billion worth of rolling stock and it has to be paid for. And that doesn't count how much that they carry, the value of what they carry, which is probably 3 orders of magnitude more than that every day. So, you know what the impact is on everybody? It's huge. But that's not the only thing, right? We're not alone in the universe. So this is what we have to realize. They're not alone. We're not alone. The earth is not alone. The universal community is not alone. Okay. So we have to bridge this gap. And knowing how to bridge that gap is what we're trying to teach as knowledge seekers, as spaceship teachers. And why are we teaching this in the spaceship? Because the rules in outer space apply. That's how the universe is created, and we're part of that, okay? So, but we are in heaven. We are in the lap of luxury here. When we go into outer space, we don't have the creature comforts that the earth provides. Why do we want to get away from the creature comforts of earth? So there's a possibility that it's better in other places. We don't know. So what's going to get us to move?
I know Mr. Kesh had directed the knowledge seekers to try and get the nations to accept this technology. I know when I talk to people, as I said earlier, maybe 2 out of 10 listen, and 1 probably listens just out of, not being rough with me or, courteous and listening. But how are we going to get the nations, what can the knowledge seekers do to start getting the nations I guess, adjusted to this idea of this new technology? He said this was the job of the knowledge seekers.
Well, yes, so we have to appeal to the higher energy, right? What do they say? You don't take a knife to a gunfight, right? Well, you don't take physical energy to a soul exchange. The physical manifestation would maybe just be a stepping stone, a pebble on the beach.
So our souls will become more effective in this process rather than going out and holding a sign and, showing the universal body enhancement spaceship unit and try to talk to them in the physicality?
Well, of course. How are you going to talk to a truck driver who's driving by you at, 50 kilometers an hour? How do you communicate with them? But you do on a soul level. So now they know. Now the truth is out there that first of all, the truckers respect the rest of the population and the rest of the population respects them. So now you have that knowledge. Okay, so what has happened? A kind of patriotism that we haven't tasted for so long. And the younger generation says they haven't, tasted it for years. But the older generation absolutely knows how long that's been. And I'm telling you, 1967 was a long time ago. Okay. And you can, flower it as much as you want. You can put all the cosmetics on that you want, make it pretty, make it beautiful. But underneath, man, the only person who knows that is someone who's connecting on a soul level, because you cannot lie to the soul. And it's because we can't lie to the soul is why we can't go out in the universe, because the universal souls operate on the soul basis. So, it's like a
So,
guy in Pee Wee hockey trying to tell Wayne Gretzky how to score a goal. Really? Are you kidding? If anybody's going to tell anybody, maybe Wayne Gretzky, could you be a guest at our Pee Wee hockey team and, impart a few tricks on us? So this is the sequence how it goes. And it's not a matter of superiority. It's just a matter of talent and skill and being able to use that talent and skill. This is not a pretentious thing. I'm not here pontificating to you. I'm not here to, show off. There's nothing for me to show off. When you see 93 miles of truckers driving down the highway, that's a sight. And these are big rigs. And there's a little guy inside. And inside him is a little soul. And that's the driver. That soul is the driver. And that soul is connected to all the souls in all the trucks. So you and I, as knowledge seekers, know that. Do you think the truckers know that? No. You know why? Because they're too busy driving their trucks, okay? They have to drive all day long, and then they sleep. And then they drive all day long, and then they sleep. That's what they do, okay? And they have to be attention all the time, because one little misattention and they could have an accident with severe consequences, right? So they are on their game all day long, really, really demanding. But they're willing to do that because they have their freedom. And as long as they had their freedom, they were okay. But then again, you're back to the same thing. Not in my backyard. You got a problem, that's your problem. As long as it's not my problem, I'm okay with it. Now they find out it's their problem, all of a sudden there's this big hoo-ha. Where you been for 2 years? It wasn't important. Now it's important. Well, welcome to the reality. This is all important. And this is what we've been saying in the knowledge seekers. The plasma science is very important. And if important is not important, then nothing's important, right? And this is what we need to do. We have all hit an existential crisis. It's not just them, it's not just us, it's all of us. And it's not just on this planet, it's the universe as well. Why? Because there's an inner universe and there's an outer universe. And the energy exchange is based on path link and susceptibility, nearness and proximity. Okay, so if those criteria are met, then there's a connection. And with that connection, you connect to what you want to connect with. And you put a barrier with what you don't want to connect to. And the reason you don't want to connect to is because you need to preserve your energy, right? And so if you allow yourself to lose the energy through the connection, then you start to diminish that energy. So there has to be another connection. If you don't have that connection, then it all stops, right? Sorry, I didn't.
no, it's okay. It's similar to what the Universal Council does, where they create the solution through their souls. Are we going to be using our souls more? And then they see it manifest in the matter state. When you say, how do you get the nations to accept this?
If you're not having any consequences, then there's no motivation, isn't it? You know, a rich person is not worried about the rent. And so we have 12 months of the year, or we have 52 weeks of the year, and depending on how your rent is structured, those are all stress points. So someone somewhere is always worried about the rent. And as long as your rent is covered, you don't mind. But if you have a restaurant where, you know, your rent is 10,000 a month, the cost of your infrastructure is $250,000, and you have 30, 40 staff members, and they say you're going to be shut down for a month, you wonder why 200,000 people in the hospitality industry are out of work. And they can't get in their big rigs and drive to Ottawa and honk their horns. They suffer in silence.
It was amazing how when the universal community made a wish for this war not to happen, you know, in the Ukraine and all this, and all I had seen was articles in the, you know, on the computer and so on, and how it was inevitable, and everybody, with it, the next day, I started seeing articles that said, no, it's not inevitable, and this leader said we can work it out, and you know, the French don't want to go ahead with it. It was just amazing. I thought that was a beautiful demonstration of working through wishes in the soul. I mean, it was almost like within 24 hours, I didn't see any articles opposing it. And then within the next day, when they made that wish in the Universal Council, I started seeing a bunch of different articles being printed there. And they were saying, you know, we can avoid this. It's not a great thing. And NATO doesn't want to go along with it. And, you know, it was just an amazing, not a coincidence, that's for sure.
So Mark, if, you know, all the beauty contestants want peace, right? So, you know, this is kind of a universal thought. Everybody wants peace. Why is it so elusive? So the first answer really is that that request is not sincere. Right? If you say, oh, well, okay, so these are all freedom fighters. So if you say, well, we're going to fight this oppression, well, all of a sudden you get a rallying of forces. This is the problem, you know, with humanity. The only way that we can rally, that we understand to rally, is in the physicality. We have capability of rallying emotionally. We know that. It's proven. They proved it beyond a shadow of a doubt. How do you get a 40,000-pound rig driving down the highway for nothing at the owner's expense, and the owner's driving, right? How do you do that? Emotionally. You obviously do that emotionally, because the only thing that really is driving them to drive those big rigs and to buy those big rigs and to work in that dangerous environment is the financial reward. That's been taken away. So what's left? Well, now is the emotional reward. So they're going to fight. But this is a physical emotion. It is an emotion of their feeling towards their role in society, their place within the social structure. And then behold, the rest of the country is supporting them. Behold, so many are organizing, you know, Australia, South America, Europe. Why? Well, first of all, because their media is reporting it and our media is not. So this is interesting. So it's a phenomenon. You know, one of these, you know, crazy Canucks. We've always been crazy Canucks, right? Well, these crazy Canucks met their vanishing point. They drive towards the horizon, and then at the edge of the flat earth, they fall off. It's over. They're done. They're out of work. Park the rigs. Go home. It's finished. They have come to that vanishing point. And they've had all week to think about it as they drive. That's how fast this thing came up. They say, boom, you can't do this anymore. What? It happened on the 15th. Look, it's the 30th. Talk about a movement. This is pretty fast. They started rolling on the 22nd. So within a week, they figured it out. You know, we're sitting here a week and we can't pay our bills and we can't contribute the way we thought we were contributing. And this is acceptable? No, it's not acceptable. So this is all they can do. And I'm glad this is what they're doing, because what's the alternative? We've seen the alternative. You know, they could come up, you know, with their guns blazing, but these guys don't have the guns. If they had the guns, they'd have the criminal records. So they don't have this. That's how you keep your license. So these are hardworking, decent people, and their livelihood has been taken away. And then they realize on the road, they're not alone. So their protest was the jab mandate, and then they get supported from those who've had the jab, and then they get supported from ordinary people. You know, they get supported by nurses, by doctors, by police, by people working in the restaurant, farmers, whatever. It doesn't matter. What matters is freedom. And what price is freedom? Well, for some, they're done. They're all in. The pain is about to hit. But it's hitting all of us. And so this is the Corona dividend, because it's showing us what we didn't want to look at, a broken system.
Okay, I hope someone else will come in. I'm sure that someone must have a question or a comment they'd like to Alexander to comment on.
If not, I'd like to, something came on my mind when Mr. Cash explained to me what is true freedom. Is to freedom our soul, to let our soul to be free from the cage. And I can add to also to have the unique field of the both souls, soul of physicality inside, protected by the soul of man. And the true freedom is to let, to fly our soul everywhere in the universe. Also came on my mind when my mother, before dying 2 years or 3 years, always she came and used to tell me what was her dreams. And she said, I am dreaming myself flying. And she said, I was not alone. I was with you in a Persian carpet. And maybe now I realize what was this Persian carpet. Maybe is this fly unit. And I was not jealous, but I was curious how my mother can fly and me not. And she was able to fly with me, and I wasn't aware. And step by step, I was also able to discover how beautiful it is to fly in the universe. And after she passed away, I was able to fly with her, and to fly with her on my hands. And I realized, but that she didn't have weight. In this way, I realized in my dream that it was a dream and it was not reality. But I know also from her that all dreams are real. And maybe this life on this earth is also a dream. And we are dreaming here on this earth. And what is real is when we are in dream, maybe. And reality, the true reality is to have this freedom of our soul. This is our true reality and true freedom. This is my thought, and I like to share with you. And as you know, before knowing the fly unit, I travel with this fly unit. I have seen this fly unit, and I fly with it. It was amazing for me. I never share with you, but I feel like sharing because maybe my mother, before acknowledged this, she said Persian carpet. And for me, this was a symbol for this fly unit. I'm so happy that my mother helped me to fly. And she put on my soul this true freedom to fly, to freedom our soul. It's so beautiful to do this. So we have to cooperate to get to the humanity this true freedom to fly, to give freedom to our soul. This is a true nature. And we have to seek this true nature, our true freedom. Thank you. I don't want to monopolize and to talk, but I want to freedom my soul and to tell you what I have on my soul. Thank you very much.
Hi, can I say something, Alex?
Oh, by all means, please.
I feel like that we are everywhere, all level. It is my experience. I feel we are in all dimensions. So our choice is here to experience physical life and material life. So we are experienced in here, but our connection is everywhere because source and we are not different. Everything is one, and there is level, different kinds of level. So some of us can connect another level, maybe 2, 3 level more, maybe more, and some of can, but we are doing unknowingly sometimes, but we don't recognize, we don't say we do. But connection is there, everything is there, but we are experiencing this life. And if we want to manifest something, yes, we need to our emotion, our feelings can develop a thing in here, materialize. So everything is one, everything in is one. So if we want to do something in here, so we have to keep in our mind that thought. We want that, and we have to feel that emotion. It is happening. And then sometimes later we will see that thing happen. It is the way. And we are not disconnected. That is the main point is there. And our emotion making everything. So that's all. Thank you.
Yes, I think when we come to this collective awareness of the ability of the soul, and you get so many millions of people or billions of people concentrating or thinking on the same line of what they want to see manifested, these manifestations will happen quite quickly.
Yes, we are all universal. We are all universal. So our thought, our emotion, our feelings, everything works. So just take time. And sometimes I tell everybody to relax, and let the soul to work. Keep the emotion, keep the feelings inside, and then let the soul to work. That's it. Everything will be happen, whatever we want.
Yes, when we start learning to give from our souls in this collective awareness. Yes.
I had a unique experience this weekend as well. The whole convoy is a unique experience. Let me tell you something. This is your grandkids will ask you where were you when this happened. But I had a chance, thanks to modern technology, to see a truck that was pulling out of British Columbia. And I recognized this truck because he drove by my front door on Friday. And then yesterday I seen him in Ottawa. So I have literally seen his truck in 3 different locations. So it's perfectly normal, right? Because he was driving a truck. Hello, he's driving on the highway, and the highway's going from BC to Ottawa. So, you know, he's just following the path. But the thing is, I didn't see him do that in between the points that I saw him. So for my rationalization of this observation, I would have to have trust in knowing that he was, before I seen him in British Columbia, he made a decision to get into his truck, make preparations, and get on the road to the point where I seen his picture. And then I had to trust in knowing that from there to when I seen him on Friday, he drove. I can imagine where he drove, but I have to trust that he did that, because guess what? He manifested physically on Friday. And then on Saturday, I seen his picture in Ottawa. And then I had to trust in knowing, that he followed that road. Now, my physical understanding of this whole process was that he was driving this truck and he was driving down the highway. And as they say, with the rubber on the road, right? That's the way you want to drive. However, that's based on my knowledge. That's based on my understanding.
Yes.
How do I know that he didn't fly down there?
Yeah. You can manifest anywhere, and not only one place.
But
Everywhere.
that limitation is my awareness, my understanding, and my belief.
Yes.
And he did not go from British Columbia to Ottawa based on my belief. So my belief has nothing to do with this whole process.
It is his work, and your emotion only to see him.
Right. So the manifestation of my belief, of my emotion, was his physical manifestation in front of me.
Yes.
But these drivers have no idea at this point in time, and they're only getting a taste of it, is the worldwide impact that they've had. All they have seen is the many, many people that have been on the side of the road. And it doesn't seem like it's an awful lot of people. And the reason for that, it's a big country with a few people. So, you know, we don't have to stand shoulder to shoulder. When the crowd comes together, you know, we are still, you know, far apart. But as you can see by the pictures, that's a lot of people. So if you want to know what Canadians were doing this weekend, the happiness for me is that more Canadians are now aware of the crisis that is ahead of us.
You are proud of them. I am feeling your proudness in my heart.
We were so busy with the cell phones, between the telegram messages, between the text messages, between the phone calls, you can't believe it. 5 hours, I'm sitting there and my head's on a swivel. And I was exhausted at the end of it because it was nonstop work. They were coming so fast, and we knew when they were west, we knew when they were east, we knew when they arrived, we knew what people were saying around the world. And I mean around the world, all continents, all continents. So that includes South America, Australia, India, all over the place. They have no idea what's going to befall them. But this is one thing that we do know, that they showed up and someone didn't. It's not over. And this is a good thing, okay? Because this is not really the battleground. We want freedom and emancipation for everyone, not just patriots on earth, but the universal patriots as well. Patriots are not limited to their country. Patriots are limited to their ethos.
Yes.
And the ethos of the universe wants life to live. And in order for life to live, it has to be happy. And we all want to be happy, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't see anything wrong with that. So there was an absolute beauty happening on the highways. You have to be there. It's an event, massive event. It's not over. We'll see what happens. I'm not banging their drum. They bang their own drum. They honk their own horn. I'm just saying this is representative of what's going on. This is only the tip of the iceberg. And we are heavily involved in this whole thing because as a space organization, we are bringing the capabilities to everyone. Peace and prosperity to everyone. Whoever's opposed to this there's something wrong. I don't see anything wrong with that picture. Does anybody see anything wrong with that picture? Peace and prosperity and happiness, freedom.
No. Our souls with them too.
Absolutely. And when they find this out, and they will find this out because the souls communicate, then you'll see a change. So, you know, we're not the only country really sitting on the sidelines. We just have to wake up and find out that we are part of the rest of the world, and the rest of the world is watching. So we have to watch back. You know, if a member in my community cannot pay for my goods and services, then I cannot sell my goods and services. So my customer's best interest is my best interest. And that's a purely selfish attitude. But that's my community. What happens if it's the neighboring country? Or what happens if it's the neighboring continent? Well, now we have what happens if it's the neighboring universe. And is that possible? Well, of course, because all what we know is if he left BC, that's in my mind what he was born. And when I seen him, then he was in my physicality. And when I seen him in Ottawa, that's when he was gone. But there's a before he was born and there's an after when he was gone. And I'm not seeing that. That's part of his reality. So there's another reality that I'm not a part of. However, I am contributing in many ways. So I am part of it. So I'm not seeing how I'm part of it. I don't have to see it. I just trust in the process. Why? Because the universe provides. The universe provides. And it provides whatever you need. So if we don't trust that, then the energy won't flow. So this is the basic insight that I wanted to impart today. I hope you're enjoying our little travels across the country here. It's quite an exciting time. And as you can see by the schedule here, we're going to be talking about these things in the context of the plasma science. So I want to thank everybody for attending today and allowing me to make this presentation. And if you're driving down the road, you got to stay between the gutters, okay? So let's all look out for ourselves. Thank you so much. Over to you, Mark.
Very good. I thought that point that Salomia brought up was very interesting to contemplate, that the soul is just dreaming this. It just seems so far out, but I know Mr. Kesh has said many times, and we all know that the physicality is the illusion and the reality is the dream state. So it's just, and when we go to sleep, that's where we go into the dream state. Usually, most of us, or at least have some sort of experience. Sometimes we remember it and sometimes we don't. But a very interesting observation or contemplation. That could be the soul's just dreaming this, but it just seems so real. Very interesting, Salomia. Thank you for adding to the knowledge or the contemplation of the knowledge.